everyone.
Hello,
Welcome.
hello.
Thanks for being here. I'm Lucy Hitz, Director of Product Marketing at Pantheon. I'm joined by Duncan, one of our product leaders and the champion and builder of our Next.js product.
Mhm.
We're getting into something that doesn't get talked about enough in the Next.js world, what it actually takes to run Next.js at scale in an enterprise environment where the stakes are real. So I'm just going to kind of frame up what we'll be talking about today, and then Duncan would love for you to just introduce yourself. But we're going to be talking about the gap between building and running. A lot of teams have made the move to Next.js. They've shipped something, it works, but works in dev and runs like a mature production platform are two different things. And the gap usually shows up when something goes wrong.
Yep.
We're also going to talk about what enterprise teams are actually asking for, what complex teams are asking for when we talk to teams managing dozens or hundreds of sites. The questions aren't about framework features typically. They're about, who do I call when this breaks? How do I control access across different site teams? Why is my bill unpredictable? And those are some of the questions we're going to talk about today. And then the third piece of this is why now? I think the enterprise wave is arriving. Next.js really isn't we're evaluating it technology anymore. It's in production at scale for real organizations and some of the organizations that have the most dynamic websites on the web. And the infrastructure conversation really has to catch up. So Duncan, love for you to introduce yourself and then tell us, you're working with these teams every day. You work really closely with our charter customers. Set the scene for us. What does a typical enterprise Next.js situation actually look like right now?
Yeah, thanks, Lucy. So like she said, I am Duncan Scouten. I'm a director of product here at Pantheon. I spend the majority of my day in Next.js in some capacity, either as a developer or leading the effort to bring Next.js to Pantheon. So it is a big part of my life, and that includes talking to customers about what they're doing with Next.js and how Pantheon can support. So to come back to your question, Lucy, around what does a Next.js enterprise situation look like today, I would say in one word, split. It's most often being seen that Next.js is being run in one location, the backend is being run in another location. You might have other services that are external and they all need to be combined. It's proliferate. You've got services and systems all bifurcated and split apart, and that's causing real trouble, especially if you get into the sort of I am managing multiple applications. That is where things get really complicated. So I'm seeing a lot of interest from enterprise users in consolidation. Next.js is no longer an experimental technology. It's quite mature. We're on version 16 now. So it's gone through a lot of changes, and more I'm seeing customers want to integrate their Next.js operations into something that's part of their existing ecosystem and existing management and procurement and billing practices. So we can break that down as we go through this conversation, but that's the really high level. It's split in many places. They want to bring it together.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about what we sometimes talk about as the complexity creep, how a simple Next.js migration turns into sort of this distributed system
Right.
with mishaps of ownership along the way. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Next.js is often picked for really justifiable good reasons. It's picked for speed, modern development practices. It uses JavaScript, and JavaScript is absolutely the language that the web is moving towards. And in fact, a lot of customers are doing it to escape their content management system. It's really just the default. If you're building a modern web application, this is what you do. The first build, super simple. It's very easy to create a Next.js app, and that is a selling point. It demos fantastically. You can go from 0 to 1 very quickly, and people really resonate with it. But as time goes on, the layers that make up Next.js, thinking things like API routes and calling in services, you have edge middleware, incremental static regeneration. There's all these different parts of the Next.js stack that individual teams start owning. So you no longer have just one team that spins up a Next.js app and it's easy to run. You now have teams that are managing different parts of it, and it becomes much more complex to wrangle all those moving parts. That means that you may have started with a nice, holistic, easy to manage tool, but as complexity propagates and you get more sites involved, it just starts getting more complicated. And that means that you have teams that are doing one part, but there's an ownership vacuum. You don't know who owns the caching layer. You don't know who owns the API routes. And that means that when things break, and they will, because technology, you don't know who exactly is the person that needs to go and fix it or who to reach out to. And that's where support comes in. So it's this whole complex web that starts easy, but like any other tech, the more it matures and the more it kind of spreads across your org, it's harder to manage. And that's where people like Pantheon can come in to bring all of it back together with, one support system and one procurement system. You no longer have as much uncertainty around who owns what. And we can make it easy to keep it all in one place, really.
Yeah, and I want to bring this to life with a real world anchor, a real world story. One of our customers is SPS Commerce, and they acquired SupplyPike and inherited the supplier wiki Next.js product. So they found themselves running WordPress on Pantheon, Next.js on Netlify simultaneously. So two dashboards, two support relationships, two billing arrangements, all for a single user-facing site. So that's really, to me, the complexity creep in practice, and one probably smaller and actually less complex version of complexity creep. But they were able to migrate Supplier Wiki to Pantheon's Next.js platform in 8 days, which is, I think, pretty impressive. But I think just to kind of ground people in what this can actually mean for a real world team. So Duncan, I want to ask you, when we talk about what does Next.js for Grownups actually mean? One of the pillars, this is just kind of an internal term we've started using, me and Duncan throwing back across the line at each other. But what does, I think security obviously is probably the first thing you would think about.
Yeah, it's one of those big things.
Yeah, one of those big things people tend to care about in this space. What does bulletproof security actually mean for a Next.js stack?
So I can tell you that it doesn't mean that no vulnerability will ever exist. That's not exactly what we can think of when it comes to bulletproof. But Next.js is complex. And when you have a large site with a wide surface area, you have to be thinking about how to lock down all the layers, because Next.js, it blurs the client, the thing that your customers are actually interacting with. So your site, your application, and the server, what we have on our side, which is actually serving all of the things that make up your application, like server components, server actions, API routes, edge middleware. There's all of this stuff that goes on inside Next.js that can each be an attack surface. Now, the Next.js framework is quite good at its own security management, but like anything else, the bigger something gets, the riskier it becomes. So, like recently, there was an issue with a middleware thing. There's a thing in Next.js called middleware. It handles a lot of that interaction and intersection between the client and the server. It's, the middleware between those two things. And there was a vulnerability. It propagated out to the internet, and a lot of sites that are using Next.js were affected by this. They were compromised from a security level. And when that happened, everybody had to respond to it. But with all of those, with the way that a lot of Next.js stacks are built, you don't have a central governance for all of those sites. If you have 15, 20, 200 Next.js sites in your stack, you have to update each and every one of them. There's no way to quickly take that vulnerability and correct all of it for all of your applications. This meant that people were trapped in like, I got to fix all these things really quickly. And there was a period where some apps were still exposed, but others weren't. That is a kind of security thing that really does matter. Whenever something goes wrong, you need a rapid resolution path. And that means that having that central source of truth can be a big part of it. Now, that's just at the application layer. At the edge layer, there's all sorts of attacks happening out there. And when you have an enterprise, when you're looking for an enterprise grade solution, you need things like a real solid edge protection, protecting you from bots, making sure that the requests are never touching what's called the origin. So that's where the actual data lives. With Pantheon, whenever a request comes in, we route it through the global CDN or the content distribution network. And we have something called the advanced global content distribution network that covers even more cases. So managing security before it even gets to the application. These things truly matter. There's a bunch of other stuff that's going on in the background that it's worth just calling out by name, even if we don't go into it, like centralized secrets management. You have one place to manage your secrets for multiple environments, not just one secret in one file and another secret in another file, or heaven forbid, you've got a secret encoded in the actual code. We help make all of those things easy to manage. And that means that as your surface gets bigger, having the centralized tooling to manage a lot of sites in one place becomes even more important as a security concern. And I'm quite proud of what we've done with being able to keep that in one location and make it easy for everybody to manage their whole portfolio.
So security, check, big part of Next.js for Grownups. Next one, support, right? Because when something does go wrong, what does real support look like? And why specifically for Next.js does this matter? And what does it look like for Next.js?
When something goes wrong, and it will, who do you want to talk to? A robot or a human? That's a lot of what people are faced with right now. There's a disconnect in a lot of support that our competitors are offering. Whenever something goes wrong with Next.js on Pantheon, you've got a person that you can reach, a human being that can help you, that can go into your site, that can understand what is happening and talk with you and work through the problem together. That really does matter. And at an enterprise scale, whenever you've got multiple systems across multiple providers, you're dealing with multiple support queues. You have one problem going on in your Next.js application, but that might affect your database. If your Next.js application is on one provider and your database is on another, then you're going to be waiting in the queues for both of them, and you have to coordinate across multiple people or robots. It gets really complicated. So having that single source of truth for, I know this person, they are going to help me, they know my configuration of the entire stack, they know how this fits into my portfolio, we've got SLAs with them, there are audit trails, all of this is in one place. And you've got somebody on the other side of the phone, metaphorically speaking, who understands that architecture. That is a significant advantage. Because when you're having an enterprise organization that needs to keep track of all these things for compliance and really just internal auditability, having all of this makes a big difference in the quality of life when you adopt Next.js. You don't have to give up that personalized service with Pantheon but you might if you go with some of our other competitors, who I won't name by name.
Okay, so we got security, we have support, and specifically consolidated support, I think is a big piece of what you just mentioned. Next on the list, I think, is multi-site governance. So many of our customers manage hundreds of sites with us across their portfolio. How do you manage 50 or 500 Next.js sites without losing your mind? And or a mix of Next.js and WordPress and Drupal, a mixed stack.
Absolutely. And this is something that Pantheon really does excel in. We've got, like I've alluded to a couple of times over this call, we have tooling inside Pantheon that lets you group sites together where there is a central source of truth for all of the sites under what we call the upstream are all going to be managed by the same parent control. So you change the upstream, and then all of the sites downstream from that inherit those updates, and you can apply them either individually or as a group. And I can show you an example of what this looks like in our dashboard. So this is, let me share my screen here. This is an example of what an upstream management tool looks like inside Pantheon. Never mind the silly name. This is just stuff that we're using for testing internally. But what actually matters is this information here. So this is a list of the sites that are inside that upstream. And when an update is applied, you can see, for example, that it knows that of the 8 sites or of the 6 sites that are in this upstream, 2 are up to date. One has a updating operation happening right now. This is a bit of sample data. So it's not pulling 100% live, which is why you're seeing a little bit of screwiness here. But the concept is what I wanted to put out there so you can see it. You have information on each of the sites. You can see, hey, the most recent update, did it get applied? Which of the sites are outdated? Which of the sites still need to be changed? Having this central source of truth gives a really unparalleled level of control around what each site is running. Then, let me just stop sharing there. You've got things like one dashboard that lists all of your WordPress, your Drupal, your Next.js sites in one place, and you can apply bulk actions to all of them rather than having to go across multiple different platforms to change one site here and one application there and all of that. You've got things like access controls. You can define in your central source of truth for users who can do what. That means that you're not going to have a situation where the wrong person is able to deploy to prod on this site. As you get more contractors, as you get more employees, the risk of the wrong person deploying the wrong thing to the wrong site goes up exponentially. With this central identity management system that Pantheon has, that is no longer the case. You can tell very clearly this person has access to this site and they can push to the following environments. And that gives confidence that you're not going to have these errant contractors who might not know the system deploying the wrong thing and causing an outage. So this is some of the stuff that I think is really important when it comes to multi-site portfolio management, and Pantheon really kind of stands behind that as one of our biggest differentiating features.
Yeah, and real world example here too. One of our customers who will be on our LinkedIn Live next week, AmericanEagle.com, specifically the multi-dev deployment pipeline where every pull request auto spins a live reviewable environment works so well for the Next.js Dixon Valve project that they rebuilt, AmericanEagle.com rebuilt their entire deployment philosophy around it, rolling it out to every Drupal site that they manage on Pantheon. So to me, that's what governance infrastructure that actually works looks like repeatable and reliable. I want to take us to the final, I think, check on the checklist of Next.js for Grownups, which is predictable pricing.
Mhm.
This is a thorny one. This is a spicy one.
Yeah, it
But
is.
why is infrastructure cost so hard to predict with Next.js, and what does it take to fix that in your mind?
It's not inherently, I think, that the infrastructure cost is hard to predict as much as it is a lot of Next.js providers choose to operate on consumption pricing. So they'll charge you for what you're using, which in some cases is the right thing. If you are a low traffic site and you're not using much compute, then paying for as little compute as you're using is a great thing. But as you go up into enterprise level, your traffic goes up and you get more exposure to spikes. If something that you're doing makes the news and you get a bunch of people that are suddenly going to your website, well, that compute price is going to go up. All of those function invocations, boy, I'm talking nerd now, they go up too. Everything gets suddenly more expensive, and it is a very common situation. You go on Reddit and you'll find any number of stories around, I had a traffic spike last night and I just woke up to a $3,000 bill. I was not expecting a $3,000 bill for this month, but you are effectively penalized for success. At enterprise scale, where predictability in pricing is so important for annual cost modeling and all of that, having a sense of I'm going to pay the same thing every month. And yes, there will be months where my traffic is lower than what I am paying for. That happens. But there are also going to be months where your traffic is higher than you are expecting, and you are not going to get penalized for that. It's okay to have spikes. We want you to be successful. And as companies get larger, that matters a lot.
Yeah.
You're going to get the two sides of it. Some people, if you are the most cost conscious, then consumption-based pricing might be the better fit for you. There's no shame in going with that. But if you want predictability, Pantheon is actually one of the few providers of Next.js at any sense of scale that offers that confidence that what you paid last month is going to be what you pay next month, no matter what happens to your traffic or how the site is used. And I think that is, people go different ways on it, but it's something that I think that we're making the right call on. And definitely the feedback we've received from our customers is, yeah, this is nice to know that there's consistency and predictability there.
Mhm. Thank you. So we've covered a lot of ground today: security architecture, what real support looks like, multi-site governance at scale, pricing without surprises. And I really appreciate you being here, Duncan. Any final words before I remind folks of next week's special guest?
I think that it's really worth calling out that Next.js is real. This is not something that you're just going to dabble in anymore. The web is definitely going in this direction. We want any of the Pantheon customers that are listening today to go in, make a site. It's easy to make a Next.js site. And if you run into trouble, reach out to your support crew. They're there for you. They've helped others before. And we want to get people crossing that threshold into really using this technology. And this is a big part of where Pantheon is going. So we're moving towards some other exciting stuff that this fall we'll be showing off in person at the Go Live conference in Miami on the beginning of October, 6th and 7th. So if you're interested in Next.js, in modern web development, in seeing where Pantheon is going to be going, then join us in Miami. Look into Go Live. We'll share a link afterwards. Yeah. And this is where we'll be talking about exactly what Pantheon looks like going forward, and Next.js is a big part of it.
And one more thing before you go, next week we will have a special guest, two special guests from AmericanEagle.com. They're a 30-year digital agency that just rebuilt a full e-commerce site headless on Pantheon using Next.js and Drupal. I talked about them a little earlier. But if you want to see kind of everything we talked about today looks like, what everything we talked about today looks like in a real production environment, that's the episode. So we will share the link in the comments below too. Set a reminder, RSVP, and we'll see you there. Thanks, Duncan, again for joining us today.
Thanks, Lucy. Good seeing everybody.